Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me.
Heathers is the most influential teen film of all time. It's everywhere we look, from click flicks like Mean Girls and Gossip Girl to darker teen media like 13 Reasons Why. It's everywhere, but at the same time, it's nowhere. Since the film's release in 1989, no piece of teen media has achieved what Heathers did. But before I go any further, you probably have a lot of questions. But let's start with, to understand what Heathers accomplished, let's travel back to the decade that Heathers was born from, the 1980s. The 1980s were the golden age for American teen cinema, which was born out of the 1950s. The teen movies of the time presented a rose-tinted, optimistic view of life, where teens faced some internal conflict, but ultimately everything worked out and everyone had a happy ending. But the reality of teenage life in the 1980s was a completely different story, as the teenage suicide rate continually increased and different sources of media were romanticizing it. Heathers was born out of its ambition to break this contrast between teen films and real teen life, and so it tackled the darker aspects of teen life that films at the time were either ignoring completely or romanticizing, such as sexual assault, mental health problems, the dark side of cliques, and these rising suicide rates. In fact, the first line of Heathers that Daniel Waters wrote was,
take out her tonsils?
Excuse me, I think I know Heather a little bit better than you do. If she was going to slit her wrist, the knife would be spotless.
It's difficult to understand how truly unexplored this territory was for a teen film. So let's hear how the director explains it.
Well, I feel like everybody knows the language now. There was definitely not the willingness to talk about things, which made my job much more funny, because this was all unearthing things that hadn't been really said or talked about. And then instead of going right to the serious version, I went to the assume everyone deep down knows the serious version, and I'm going to do the comic version that kind of messes with your head.
Heathers ambitiously used the dark and gory parts of 80s slasher films to portray the darker aspects of teen life that the light and bubbly teenage films of the time weren't addressing. This ambitious crossover paved the way for future teen media, and we'll get to exactly how Heathers influenced future teen media in a second. But before that, there's even more to what made Heathers so legendary. Heathers not only displayed the dark aspects of teen life, but it also provided satirical social commentary on them. The film embraced unexplored darkness in teenage life to satirize how society romanticized the teenage experience through the rose-colored lenses of these films, to the point where it was harmful to actual teenagers.
We're talking teen suicide here. And ask Allison, the number one song in America today is Teenage Suicide, Don't Do It by Big Fun. But Jesus, man, Westerberg finally got one of these things, and I'm not going to blow it. We were wondering if you had any poems, artwork that Heather did that we can put in the Heather Chandler yearbook spread.
What?
Take a look. It's a 2-page layout with her suicide note right up here in the corner.
Heather, how many networks did you run
like a lot of
to?
the same things. It's just not going to be the same here without her.
What are you talking about? You hated her, she hated you.
Every English class, I look forward to seeing her.
Heather Chandler's more popular than ever now.
The film's actress Winona Ryder explains this glorification well.
Actually just gone through something where a girl had committed suicide who was called everything from a freak, a witch, just a girl who dressed differently and who was kind of goth. And she committed suicide in my school. And then as soon as she committed suicide, everybody was talking about how great she was and saying that they were friends, and her funeral was huge. And it was like, and then I got the script, and it just really struck me because I was so disgusted with the behavior.
My whole life is a mess. I was supposed to be captain of the cheerleading team. Man, she knows we listen to this show. Holy shit, we'll crucify her.
Where's Heather going?
She's going to cry.
Okay. Have you heard? We were doing Chinese at the food fair when it comes over the radio that Martha Dump Truck tried to buy the farm. She belly flopped in front of a car wearing a suicide note.
Is she dead?
No, that's the punchline. She's alive and in stable condition. Just another case of a geek trying to imitate the popular people of the school and failing miserably.
Heathers is great for a myriad of reasons, but by far its longest lasting impact besides lackluster spin-offs is its look at and critique of society. See, one thing a lot of wannabe award winners do wrong is assign hatred to the individual, when in actuality, what creates these sort of problems is usually imperfections in society that allow people who need help to be ridiculed or ignored. There's a reason JD compares society to his school, in a way he's completely right. Westerberg is society because, like society, it glorifies all that is bad and wrong in the world at the expense of people who need help. They mourn the deaths of 3 of their most popular students. They write songs about avoiding suicide, make PSAs, public radio shows, only to point and laugh at people brave enough to say they need help.
Heathers is truly one of a kind because of how biting of a satire it was, how poignant and accurate its use of dark comedy was at ridiculing society at the time. But if Heathers is so unique, where is its influence? Even though no piece of teen media has achieved what Heathers did in this regard, of accurately and thoroughly satirizing a significant social issue of the time, the influence of Heathers is present in nearly every piece of beloved teen media since the film's release.
The script was very much a satirical deep dive into everything going on with teenagers at the time. PSAs about drunk driving and suicide paired with a love for John Hughes and a cynical outlook made Heathers what it was. It stood out so much from other teen films at the time that in the years after its release, film scholars would cite the movie as the death rattle to the John Hughes era of the teen comedy. And maybe it was a death rattle, but it was also an exciting new beginning. Today, shows like Riverdale and Elite boast themselves on being dark crime mysteries set in high school. Shows like these have a couple of things in common. They both went way downhill, and they may not have happened without Heathers, which took social issues arising amongst the teen population and satirized it to the point of gleeful absurdity. The script was about all the issues that we were talking about at the time, like teen suicide and drunk driving and any of the various one-line moral tales, and putting them all in a blender and mixing them up and throwing them at you in a way that you definitely didn't expect. And you're kind of going, whoa. Am I allowed to laugh? These films sparked a new kind of teen movie that wasn't always lighthearted. Heathers' influence in particular would bring us Cruel Intentions, shows like Gossip Girl and Glee, and more importantly, the 1999 film Jawbreaker.
We can see the film's influence on so much that came after it. In the comic portrayal of superficial or cruel girls who run their high school, in stories about the darkness of teen female friendships. The most obvious descendant of Heathers would probably be Mean Girls, which was actually directed by Waters' brother, Mark.
Hi, Courtney. Love your cardigan.
Oh my god, I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
But as much as Heathers has influenced everything since, the film was daringly dark in a way that later movies haven't been. To this day, no high school comedy has really matched Heathers in fearlessly going there and pulling no punches on the popular kids, high school, and society itself.
I just killed my best friend.
And your worst enemy.
Same difference.
Heathers was an absolute masterpiece, perfectly made for its time and society. But maybe the director Michael Lehman is right when he advocates that Heathers was a unique product of its time, but it should be left there. When asked about the absence of a modern-day equivalent, Lehman states that it was a very special script, a very special set of circumstances, and it doesn't happen that often. Perhaps the absence of a modern-day equivalent is an indication of significant societal changes, creating barriers for a dark teen satire like Heathers to exist. While JD walking around the school with a gun under his trench coat might have alarmed viewers at the time of the film's release,
I'll repeat myself.
God, they won't expel him. They'll just suspend him for a week or something.
He used a real gun. They should throw his ass in jail.
No way. He used blanks. All JD really did was ruin 2 pairs of hands. Maybe not even that. Can you bleach out urine stains?
it did not instill that visceral sense of dread in people viewing the film now, forcing them to identify JD as similar to the shooters of Columbine, Parkland, and too many others. At the time of its release, Heathers was easier for viewers to digest. All the darker aspects of the film, like the attempted suicides, the murders, the bomb, all felt distant enough to not instill real fear within the viewers. But the same cannot be said for today. Waters even noticed this change, stating that it's funny that what was kind of a satirical fantasy, almost borderline science fiction, has now got the blood of reality. Consequently, recent teen media that has even attempted to follow in the film's footsteps and take a comedic approach towards dark topics have failed miserably. A notable example is the Heathers remake series, which actually completely strayed from the message of the movie and used the same dark aspects that the film embraced purely for its provocative value, while providing zero accurate social commentary. I realize that this is a bit of a statement, but it makes sense when you realize that the message of the series was that the modern-day Heathers or social elite are LGBTQ+, body positive, and people of color, while the social victims are white, slim, and heterosexual, therefore making the series fail as a satire because it provided incredibly inaccurate social commentary. Perhaps because of the failure of its premise, the series faced backlash because of the darkness it embraced. Although the show writers delayed the show's premiere due to the Parkland tragedy, it still faced backlash for its use of violence. In 2018, television critic Daniel Daddario wrote that the show's impulse to lean on violence that consciously borrows from the real world for no reason but provocation is not just offensive in the wake of a recent tragedy, but it doesn't fit at any moment. Overall, because of the greater prevalence of violence in schools now than at the time of Heathers' release, in order for a modern-day equivalent of the film to succeed, the value of its social commentary must substantially outweigh any shock value stemming from the exploration of darker topics. The issues that the original Heathers embraced remain relevant today, and teenagers of this day and age face even more issues that have not been satirized in a way like Heathers, such as the role of social media and the greater fear of school shootings. These modern-day issues lacking satirization indicate that a contemporary equivalent of Heathers could exist if it overcame this daunting balancing act.